Thanks very much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And here at the table, Susan Ferriccio, the chief congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner, and Felisa Sanmez, congressional reporter and now political reporter for the Washington Post. Thank you for being with us. Congressman, let me begin with the obvious, your reaction to the results in the Republican primary yesterday and what you think it says about your home state.
Well, I think that yesterday's result came about as a result of two conversion kind of situations. You had Milton Romney, who a week ago was leading by 20 points, but not able to come clean with the American people, at least in their minds, as to exactly who and what he is. His answers to questions seem to be filibusters. He would never talk about that 15% tax rate in a way that people could identify with it. He would never talk about his relationship with Bain and what it did to Georgetown and two outstanding communities here where jobs were lost. And people just didn't feel him. On the other hand, Newt Gingrich from the neighboring state of Georgia, knowing something about the votes that would be cast in the South Carolina Republican primary, better than 6% evangelical, attempted to appeal to them by going after the media as he did in Charleston. He went after the media down in at Myrtle Beach. He, quote, put Warren Williams in his place. These were words and phrases that he used, calling President Obama a food stamp president. These are things that were reminiscent of the Southern strategy of Richard Nixon and the welfare queen created by Ronald Reagan. He understands all of that. He played into it very well and did a masterful job of connecting with the Republican voter.
From politics to this week's State of the Union, all the issues we want to focus on with our guest, Congressman Jim Clyburn, Susan Ferriccio of the Washington Examiner.
Congressman Clyburn, let me follow up with you a little bit on what you just said about Gingrich and talking about food stamps and the poor. During the debate, one of the debates, he was asked about this, and the audience was on its feet cheering when he talked about the idea of the poor looking for jobs and not food stamps. Now, you say that you clearly found this issue denigrating to the poor, but it seems to have resonated with the voters of South Carolina. Wouldn't you agree? You guys have an unemployment rate close to 10%. Would you at least agree that, Congressman Clyburn, that Speaker Gingrich's message has resonated with the voters clearly because he's won the primary there?
Well, sure, it resonated. Not that it was. The fact of the matter is, we all know the record is very clear. 49% of the people who are on welfare are white. We know that. But people think otherwise. We know that there never existed a welfare queen. The admission was made long after Ronald Reagan that they created that out of whole cloth, but it worked. And so we had a welfare queen created by Ronald Reagan. So Newt Gingrich, seeing all of this, decided that he would create a food stamp king. And that's what he did, and sure, it resonated. But the fact of the matter is, nobody wants to be on food stamps. Everybody would want a job. But when people come back from Iraq, Afghanistan, and there are no jobs to be had, they've got children to feed, they are going to look to feed those children. And many of them turn to food stamps, not because they want to, because they have to. And the fact remains that President Obama would never have to expand the food stamp program if only George W. Bush had expanded the workforce. Instead, he cut back on jobs to the tune of 2.1 million jobs in the 3 months running up to President Obama's inauguration. So it was up to the president to either leave those people on the streets without food or expand the food stamp program so they can stabilize their lives, feed their families, and I don't think that's a bad thing. In fact, That is what our Christian faith teaches us to do. Feed the poor and take care of those who are less fortunate.
Apologize for that. Felicia Sanchez of the Washington Post.
Hi, Mr. Leader. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Staying on the topic of race and presidential politics, it seems a decade ago, but about 4 years ago, those two topics actually came together in the Democratic presidential primary when President Bill Clinton, who was stumping on behalf of his wife, made comments that many interpreted as downplaying President Obama's chances in the race, saying that his narrative was a fairy tale and pointing out that Jesse Jackson won the state of South Carolina twice during his presidential bids. Why do you think that these comments seem to come up around the time of the South Carolina primary? And just more broadly, do you think that President Clinton, now 4 years later, has done enough to repair the ties that he may have broken when he made those comments 4 years ago?
Well, quite frankly, I don't think President Clinton ever really broke any ties. The fact remains, we all know that the South Carolina primary is the first in the South. They leave here today, and in 10 days there will be a primary in Florida. And very soon, I think around Super Tuesday, there will be Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. So these kinds of discussions come in simply because South Carolina is first up in this part of the country, and it's a different electorate here than in the rest of the country. And you see words and phrases being used to connect with voters that I don't think plays well in other parts of the country. So I love that South Carolina is first, but because on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, you get a chance for the candidates to demonstrate their viability to the base. Now, this time, Democrats know full well who our nominee is going to be, but 4 years ago, we didn't. And to give the African-American community an opportunity to let its voice be heard, and it was heard very emphatically.
Mr. Leader, Speaker Gingrich has talked about himself as a candidate who can contrast himself best with President Obama. But this week, everyone's going to be really focused on President Obama because, as you know, he will be delivering his State of the Union address to Congress. What does he need to say to Congress right now? Of course, it's a campaign year that's upon us. A lot of politics are involved in what he's going to say. But we also have a really high unemployment rate, particularly in your state. What do you think President Obama needs to say to lawmakers, to the country, in his State of the Union address on Tuesday?
Well, I think he has to lay out a vision for the future that I'm sure will be a contrast with either one of the Republicans. But he has to lay that vision out and let the American people know that he believes that what has started to happen, 22 million jobs created in the private sector, 22 months of private sector job creation over the last 22 months, and that we're building upon that. Unemployment rate today is less than it was last month, which was less than it was the month before. So the trajectory is in place. We are moving in the direction that we need to move into, and we're going to build upon that. So I think that the President will be showing us the way forward, laying out for us his vision of how we should go forward on all of this, and he will do so without shredding the safety net. He will do so without getting rid of Medicare, without privatizing Social Security, without threatening educational opportunities for young people. And if you look at that vision that's been laid out by Republicans, adopting the so-called Ryan budget, all three of those things will be put at risk. And this president will not do that. He is going to methodically move this country to where it ought to be and do so in such a way that will not put people at peril.
Mr. Leader,